All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining. My name is Joshua Fox, and today we are going to be going over an Aruba introduction and positioning of our products against some of our competitors. All right, so let's go ahead and get started here and get rid of this. All right, so our agenda for the day is to go over our enterprise and SMB solutions. We'll move from there into our management solutions. Then we'll be talking a little bit about some of the things that Aruba offers from a security perspective. Then we'll move on into some analytics and wayfinding, and then we'll go ahead and conclude on a summary of kind of everything we talked about and really touch on the why Aruba message. So before we get into the actual solutions, I'd like to quickly go over some of the reasons that you should be confident in Aruba as a solution. Now, what you're looking at here is the Gartner Magic Quadrant. This is a quadrant that's put together by a company called Gartner. They're a third-party company that will basically go in and look at a solution and sort of rate it. And they do this across a wide variety of different types of solutions. And what you're looking at here is the Magic Quadrant for the wired and wireless LAN section. And this, if you take a look here on the right, you'll see Aruba is really at the top of the spectrum. And the way this quadrant really works is as you move over to the right of the quadrant, the more complete your vision or your solution really is. And the higher up on the quadrant you are, the higher your ability to bring that vision to life or to execute on that vision is where you're at. So the higher you are and more to the right you are on this quadrant, the stronger you are as a networking vendor. So HP Aruba is really a leader. You see us constantly being at the leader, but in the last 2 years, we have outscored everybody else that you might see here on this quadrant. And if you take a look here, this is actually everywhere that we scored number one. We scored number one on unified wired, our performance on stringent applications, on working with multi-vendor networks, with our remote branch office solutions, as well as our WLAN only refresh or new build solutions. In fact, the only area that we did not score number one, where we scored number two in, is just wired access in the LAN. So as you can see, we really are top scorers, and we really are getting this every single year. So definitely, when you talk Aruba, have some confidence, because we're definitely one of the strongest players that you're going to see in the wired or wireless LAN space. All right, so let's talk about the actual products that we have. What do we actually sell here? So first, it's our access points. Now, what you're looking at here is just a holistic view of our 300 series indoor access points. There are some transitions, and I'll go over what those are so you know what's out there and you know what you should be looking at as the most current. So with Aruba, generally, the smaller the actual number of an access point, the lower it is on our scale of how much density an access point can really support. So as you go on the smaller number of access points, those are your entry level, and as you move up to the larger access points, those are going to be your high density options. So down here at the bottom, you'll see our 207. This is transitioning over to the 303. They're the exact same cost. The 303 is just a 802.11ac Wave 2 version of the 207. So definitely when you're going into the entry level, keep a lookout on those 303s over the 207s. However, you might be able to find a good deal on the 207, and if that's the case, still definitely a viable access point. Now, in our 303s, we have an offshoot, the 303P. This is an interesting access point that has a PoE out port for daisy chaining in the next access point in the chain, basically allowing you to power two access points off of one PoE port rather than having to run two separate cable runs to two separate access points. Pretty popular in our smaller businesses that might have, one or two access points, but really doesn't need to run a bunch of cable throughout their business. The 300 series, that's going to have our 305 and 304 access points. That's going to be our still low density access point, and then really a step up over the 303. If our 303 access point was the lowest of densities, you would probably put that right around the 30 or so devices. If you had more than that, I would definitely jump up to the 304, 305, and the 300 series. These are going to be about 50 or so concurrent devices So when you get to there, that's the number you should be looking at. When you jump up to the 315, you're really going to be looking around the 75-ish devices connected. Now, the 320 and 330 series are both around 100. Now, these are 100 devices connecting in. Now, both of these access points are actually transitioning right over to the 340 series access point. The 340 is actually the same cost as the 320. However, it does outperform both the 320 and the 330 series, letting you get about 100 or so users connected into it. However, it does have more antennas. It does have a software configurable 5 gig radio, as well as the ability to do PoE failover on its PoE ports. All right, so after we look at these, let's go ahead and look at what was just announced. These are 802.11ax access points. Recently announced at Atmosphere was the 530 and 550 series access points. The 510 was announced at the end of 2018. So these are all going to be our newer access points, all supporting 802.11ax. So these are definitely going to be a little bit higher density. One thing I would just point out on AX access points, though, is that AX clients don't quite exist yet. So these guys won't be able to really realize their full potential until those AX clients start to drop. When that starts to happen, you're going to start seeing much higher client densities. Now, the rudimentary numbers is we're looking around 150 or so users on a 510. The 530 and 550 are both capped there at around 200 users. However, you're going to see that number really go up once those AX clients start to hit. The 550 is actually pretty interesting itself because you can run that with tri-radio mode and have 2 of the 5 gigahertz radios running at 4x4 MIMO for spatial streams with one 2.4 gig, or you can run one of the 5s in an 8x8 mode. So it really can jump up for some very high density there in that 550 series access points. Now, another interesting thing about all these 500 series access points is they support Zigbee. So if you're running a lot of IoT devices, that is a very popular protocol that they are using. They also have embedded Bluetooth in them, so definitely really good as well in that IoT space if you're looking to connect a lot of different sensors or any of those devices using those protocols. All right, so we also have outdoor and ruggedized access points. Our 370 series is going to be our high-density outdoor access point. Now, these things are actually IP67 rated, so you can put these things outside, rain, weather, doesn't really matter. They also survive some pretty extreme temperatures, down into the -40, I believe, for the 370 series. So definitely feel free to put these guys in really any environment and know that they're going to definitely hold up. We have our 318 series. Now, the 318 is a ruggedized access point. However, it is not waterproof. Pretty popular in our warehousing space or shipping spaces where you might have buildings that are, not temperature controlled, and they might need to have something that can survive some incredible temperatures. However, they are indoors still, so there is no danger of rain getting into the access point. So ruggedized, not weatherproof on the 318. Now, our 387 it's an interesting access point. It's really a point-to-point bridge that utilizes the 60 gigahertz with a backup 5 gigahertz radio. You can get a guaranteed gig on this thing really at 400 meters. So in those spaces where you really can't run a cable, but you do need to extend that connection, the 387 is a really good option, being a dedicated bridge. Our 360 series is going to be our lower density, less expensive, more cost-effective access point, really complementary to the 370. Allows you to have an outdoor access point when you're not really struggling for density. You just need wireless outdoors, and you still need to survive the weather, rain, and some extreme temperatures. All right, so now that we've covered the hardware, well, let's talk about what inside that hardware really kind of puts us above the competition here. And really our claim to fame comes with this instant access point. Now, the instant access point is an access point that basically gives you controller functionality without actually having to add a hardware controller into the environment. One access point becomes the master controller, if you will. Virtual controller in the access point allows it to start making some of the intelligent decisions that you would usually need to put a controller into the environment for. And it really is feature-rich, and you're really not sacrificing a lot going to the instant over a controller-based solution. You're going to get your built-in RF management here. That gives you your adaptive radio management, or our ARM. ARM is really about making sure that the best access points are associating with certain clients, or making sure that the clients are associated with the best access point. And a part of Adaptive Radio Manager that really takes care of that is Client Match. And Client Match really allows you to do your load balancing, moving people from one access point that might be overloaded to another that might not have as many connections. Allows you to change your power settings or your channel settings, as well as solves for your roaming and sticky client situations. It uses a proprietary algorithm that Aruba developed, throws in different metrics about your clients and your access points, and then is able to make those intelligent decisions so that you always have the best wireless experience available. We also have a lot of built-in security features. We have a firewall built right into the access point, allowing you to make role-based decisions on who can access what. We have intrusion detection right on the access point, allowing you to do whips directly with our instant access points if you would like to protect yourself from wireless attacks. We also have a feature called Application RF that's going to give you visibility into the applications that people are using. You can look at this from a category perspective, how much was web traffic, how much was streaming traffic, and so on. You can look at this from a user category, how much was Joe Schmo using in terms of bandwidth, what sites was he seeing, really whatever you want to see. You can get some really good granular visibility there with your instant access point. Now, we also have built-in resiliency here. If one access point, which happened to be the master, were to fail, another access point can actually pick up that master role, and you continue rolling. You don't have to worry about that master access point failing and your instant network falling down. So some pretty rich features there, but with all of that, we also have quite the amount of scalability here. Now, you can go all the way up to 128 instant access points in a cluster. However, when I get to about the 50-ish range, I usually like to start bringing up a controller, as those environments tend to have some of the complexities that a controller can solve for. So I definitely do like to do that. However, know that you can go up fairly high. 128 access points is fairly large, and you can still support a lot of devices, up to 2,000 devices. I usually say about 1,000 users, 2 devices per user. So 1,000 users, 128 instant access points in a cluster. You know that these can really, go kind of large compared to some of our competitors. So, I mean, what are we looking at in the competitor space? Well, we have Mobility Express from Cisco. Not a bad product, but you're not going to get the kind of scalability that you're going to get out of an instant access point. You're not going to put 100, Mobility Express access points anywhere. You're also not going to be able to connect that many devices, and you're not going to get these types of rich features. To have a feature like Client Match in a Cisco world, you're going to be looking at something called Clean Air, and Clean Air requires a controller as well as separate products like Prime Infrastructure or MSE or even DNA to kind of make that feature work. You also have to have specific access points. Not all access points really support that Clean Air feature. If you're looking at your Ruckus, you're still looking at that kind of like virtual controller. You're not really looking at something that scales and again takes care of this amount of feature set at this really small of a stage. So definitely, keep this in mind. And in the majority of your smaller 10 access point deployments, which are the most common deployments out there, the instant access point is really going to shine in that 1,000 user and under situation. So, I mean, how does it really work? It's pretty simple, really. First access point that you set up, you set that one up. It becomes the master. Any other access points that are connected into the environment will phone into the master and really pick up their configurations. The master is going to perform all of your firewall and controller functions. Think your client match, as well as your adaptive radio management. All of that really comes to the master to make those decisions, and it just really pushes out the configurations to the other access points. Now, the whole process of getting this set up is really about 5 minutes. It's a very quick and easy process. So it's a very quick and easy product to really get going. Even though it's very feature-rich, it's also very easy and quick to get these networks set up. All right, so let's move out of the access points and look right into our switching portfolio. Now, from left to right, we're going to cover these. Much like the access points, the smaller the number, generally the lower the capability of the switch. But we have our access switches, which is the 2530 and 2540. Now, the 2530 is a layer 2 only switch. It is fully managed, but definitely, as you can see, is layer 2 only. It's going to be mainly used to access for the edge. Now, the 2540 does mostly the same thing. It does introduce some 10 gig uplinks as well as some RIP routing. However, it is primarily used as an access switch at the edge. Now, our 2930F and 2930M are still used a lot in access, but they can still do a little bit of aggregation if we have a smaller network. The 2930F is a fixed port switch, meaning there's no really modularity to it. It's the direct, well, one of the direct replacements to the 2920, which was a very popular switch. It can stack. It's the first switch that really does support a stack, and it uses VSF to stack, so you would use the 10 gig uplinks on the 2930Fs with 10 gig to do that stacking. You'd want to do that for the bandwidth. Now, our 2930M is going to be our modular version. Now, this switch allows you to have a few modules that you can hot swap in there. I think 10 gig uplinks and dedicated stacking modules. There's also a 40 gig uplink available, however, not as many ports there. This switch also supports redundant power as well as a few smart rate options right inside of it. So it's definitely a pretty good switch. I would, if I'm deciding between a 2930F and a 2930M, usually it's that modularity that's going to let me make that decision. The 2930Ms are a little bit more expensive than the F, but because you have that modularity and that ability to be flexible, that's really where that's coming in. Now, 3810 is starting to get into the aggregation or lower end of aggregation switches. A lot of good port options there, a lot of the same modularity features that you had on a 2930M, but we do have some SFP plus options, as well as having a much higher routing feature. The 2930M and F switches had access OSPF, whereas the 3810 has a fully featured OSPF. Now, the 5400, it's really going to support it's our chassis, so it supports a lot of different port options here. We have 10 gig smart rate SFP plus, PoE plus, and a lot of different powering options based on the power supplies you might pick for it. Now, all of the switches that I've mentioned here, going from access to ag, all of these are our access switching portfolio, and they can all be controlled by Aruba Central if you're looking to have a cloud-managed option. These, as well as our hardware access points, all support a limited lifetime warranty, meaning if it breaks, we will send out a new one to you next business day. So definitely a really good option to take advantage of there. We also have free firmware updates. Really the only company out there that does that. So just know if you're going with one of our switches or our access points here and you'd like to get that latest security patch, we're not going to hide that behind a support contract or a paywall just so that you can stay current. If you would like to buy a support for a faster replacement, we will let you do that, but we're not going to stonewall you and keep you away from those critical software and bug fixes. Now, our data center switches, which is our 8320, 8325, and 8400, these switches here only have a 5-year warranty on them, not the limited lifetime warranty. However, they also do have that firmware. Now, free firmware for life, basically. Now, these switches are definitely going to have a lot higher port densities than their access switch cousins, but the real strength of these switches is something called Aruba OS CX. Now, Aruba OS CX is a very flexible operating system. It really lets you do a lot of different type of scripting, mainly Python scripting, so that you can automate and or automate your basically your data center network. So it's a very powerful switching infrastructure. It's a very powerful operating system that allows you to have a lot of customizability in your data center. The only thing I would say is that it is pretty new. Came out in 2017, won a lot of awards when it came out, but we are catching up on a couple of features, mainly VXLAN and DCB are the two that really come to mind here. They're roadmapped and they're coming, but definitely a powerful operating system here with a lot of powerful features. In addition to the powerful scripting and automation, we also have a really cool product that can go alongside this called NetEdit that really allows you to take a switching template and basically it's kind of like spell check almost, if you will, for a lot of switches. You can look at syntax errors. Did you make a mistake? Are there differences between this configuration and another configuration that you might have? It really takes the CLI that you might be used to working with and allows you to have a much easier time really fact checking and getting those configurations out to your switches. All right, so let's move out of the hardware and the instant access points and move more into our management solutions that we really carry. All right, so for our controllers here, we have everything from our low-density 7000 series all the way up to our higher density 7280 series. We also have our virtual controllers as well if you would rather deploy these as a virtual machine. Now, interestingly enough with these, unlike a lot of our competitors, Aruba's controllers do not have different features based on a controller. So all the features that you can take advantage of on a 7280, you're going to be able to take advantage of on our bottom of the line 7005. Really the only difference as you move up the line here for controllers is how many access points can you really support on these, okay? So just keep that in mind. We're not really gonna have anything like that where you have to navigate the controllers for a specific feature set that you might be looking for. We also don't do HA models. If you want to do high availability with these, you can. You don't have to repurchase or double up on licenses like you might have to do with some of our competitors. You also don't have to, buy a specific HA box or anything like that. Now, also with these, just like with our switches and access points, we're going to give you the firmware on it for free. And these also do support that limited lifetime warranty, much like the access switches. So definitely know that if you go with one of our controllers, we're going to support you for without tying anything behind again like a paywall, and do our best to get you any replacements if anything does break. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Aruba Central. Aruba Central is our cloud management solution, works with our Aruba OS switches, as well as our instant access points. And we can also use it on our controllers if we want to deploy those as SD-WAN. I'll talk a little bit about that on the next slide. But that's some of the things that we can support here with Aruba Central. Now, interestingly enough, we actually decoupled some of the services from the management, and we did this to keep the cost down. If you look at our main competitor, which is Meraki, it's $150 for one of their licenses. We only charge $100 for one of ours, and we're able to do that by taking those value-added services like the guest Wi-Fi, presence analytics, and connectivity health or Clarity, if you might have heard that name as well, and we just sell those as a separate service to the actual Aruba Central contract. So definitely something to kind of keep it down a little bit. Another real cool advantage of this is if for whatever reason you decide that you want to enter the cloud with something like Aruba Central, know that you can take advantage of whatever investment that you have in place from Aruba, and it's still going to work. You don't have to rip and replace. If you started with instant access points and you wanted to make that jump into the cloud, just buy that Aruba Central license, roll with it, and enjoy the cloud. And if you don't like it, know that you can just revert back. Don't pay the subscription anymore. Jump back to instant and use your regular operating system on those switches. You don't have to go with Aruba Central. When you look at Meraki, if you had a Cisco solution, you didn't have Meraki in place, you're looking at, ripping and replacing your Cisco solution out. You're looking at putting Meraki in. And then if you don't like the cloud, Well, I mean, it's tough luck. You either have to replace it or you have to keep those subscriptions going, because if you don't pay them, that's going to be it's going to be a really expensive paperweight. Another cool advantage here is that the device management that you would buy for an access point or a switch is the same. We're not going to charge you more for a higher end switch. If you go with something like a 3810 or a 5400 that has full layer 3 routing protocols, we're still going to charge you that $100 device management. We're not going to charge you $1,000 or so on just because you have a switch that has a higher end configuration like you would in some of our competitors here. All right, so we also have our SD-WAN solution. Now this solution actually takes a controller and it repurposes it in order to allow it to do the software-defined wide area networking. This allows you to do some really powerful quality of service and traffic shaping on the WAN side that actually will match your LAN side policies, because now you're using the same box to do that policy enforcement really on both sides. So we're really giving you the flexibility here to kind of repurpose a controller and use that for what has become a really increasingly popular way of deploying a company or deploying in a company, which is the main location or many small branch locations. All right, now our Aruba AirWave, this is going to be your network management, but more of an on-prem feel than, say, your Aruba Central. Really covers over a lot of the same types of features as something like an Aruba Central. However, it's a very cost-effective product. They're $75 a license, and just buying a license on these actually allows you to have the virtual machine for free. Now, if you go with something like an AirWave solution, know that this actually will manage and monitor third-party equipment. So it's actually pretty popular, especially with a lot of our Cisco customers who might have a mixed environment. You can manage, a Cisco switch or controller with something like AirWave or an Aruba switch or Aruba access points, Aruba instant access points, really whatever you want. So if you don't like the cloud, but you still want that centralized management, monitoring, or you have third-party equipment that you would like to manage and monitor, anything with SNMP, AirWave is going to work for you in those situations. Now, our Mobility Master is a pretty interesting product, mainly used to control controllers in very massive or large environments. It supports a lot of really cool features besides just the ability to act as a centralized management or licensing server. We're also getting some hitless failover here with these guys, meaning if something were to fail, a controller were to fail, something of that nature, another controller is already picked it up and there is no loss. There is no stateful changeover of connections or anything like that. We can do hitless on this. We can also do a hitless upgrade for a live upgrade on firmware with one of these. So if you have Mobility Master and a couple of controllers in place, you can feel free and confident to upgrade the firmware and have no downtime. Now, of course, we do user and access point load balancing, automated RF management. Those are pretty standard features with controllers, and Mobility Master is going to support that from a centralized management of multiple controllers perspective. But another interesting one we have is multi-tenant wireless networks. The easiest example of this would be something like a mall, right, where you have the same wireless space, but a lot of companies might be having their own or want their own controller or their own wireless networks. We can actually support that with Mobility Master, giving somebody each their own controller or access point that they can terminate out of, or basically have a multi-tenant type of network where different tenants are basically using the same Wi-Fi yet still separated from one another. Pretty interesting there that we can do that. Now, we also have a lot of open APIs, northbound APIs here, so that we can exchange information and work well with different vendors. And lastly, it has a really cool feature called Air Match, which basically allows us to do dynamic width adjustments on channels. Think you have an area that's very low density, but might have some high bandwidth types of applications. We can give you the full 160 megahertz channel. But if that same area were to become dense for whatever reason, like think like a cafeteria, maybe in the morning there isn't so many people there, but as breakfast starts to ramp up, lots of people start to come in. Maybe we start taking those 160 megahertz channels and cutting them down into something a little bit more suited for a high density environment. Really, we're the only company out there that does something like this. AirMatch is specific to running a mobility master with controllers, so it's a very powerful and unique feature that really only we are able to do. All right, so let's move on into the security solutions here. ClearPass is our network authentication solution. Now, really the only competitors to this would be something like a Cisco ICE or the Fortinet's Authenticator. But this is a pretty powerful solution here. It's giving you your policy engine, radius, TACX, profiling, account ID, identity store, guest. It also allows you to do some onboarding, very powerful guest features, as well as some ability to do health or posture assessments on a device as it's coming into the network. So what makes ClearPass better than everybody else? Well, one of the big things is ClearPass Exchange, and we're the only people that have something like this. And it's basically an open API infrastructure that allows us to exchange information with different security products. Think your firewall, your content filter. We can also exchange with things that aren't security related that might take advantage of that information, like a property management system. Think like a hotel where somebody checks in. As they check in, we can gather that information with ClearPass, put it into a policy for those guys authenticating in, and then when they leave, we can disassociate them as well by just integrating in with that property management system. Really, the ways that you can use this become endless because of that ClearPass exchange, because we can exchange that information really with anybody. Now, that said, we also have a I would say a simpler licensing system than some of our competitors. We're not really charging you anything extra for some of the core abilities like your TACX or anything like that. You're really just getting an access license per device. You get onboard licenses for your users, and then you get on-guard licenses if you want to do a posture assessment on those devices. So it's a pretty easy thing to get. It's also, from what I've been told, a lot easier to set up. And in fact, a lot of our most popular customers are actually Cisco customers that prefer to use ClearPass Policy Manager instead of using Identity Services Engine, just because of the ease of use, the easier licensing structure, and the ability to integrate with all of the different systems you might be using instead of being stuck using one system, one type of product, and then not having all the features of something like a ClearPass Policy Manager. Okay, now another cool product we have here is Introspect. Introspect is a user entity behavioral analytics engine. Basically what it's going to do is it's going to learn what people are doing or what devices are doing, and then if something does an attack or compromises your security in some way and starts to do things that are a little bit out of the norm, Introspect is going to catch that. And if you're using ClearPass in the environment, we can actually send that information to ClearPass using ClearPass's Exchange, and then have an action based on whatever had happened. So let's just say, for example, that somebody brought in a camera and they were installing that for us as part of our physical security, and they were able to use that to do some kind of C2C or command and control. We could catch that traffic doing something that it's not supposed to be doing, and then take that device, quarantine it utilizing ClearPass's Policy Manager, and now that device is no longer doing anything that it shouldn't be doing. We also have a paper trail here now because we know what it was doing that was different. We know when we quarantined it, and we know when it was fingerprinted and allowed onto the network because of ClearPass. We call this our 360 degrees of protection, because now we're protecting you on the entry or the device coming onto the network, but we're also protecting you while that device is part of the network, utilizing Introspect. And if something were to happen, we can make a quick action and basically protect your network. Okay, so let's move into some of the engagements and analytics types of products that we're carrying here. We have our Aruba Service Assurance Cape Networks. This was actually recently changed to the Aruba user experience insight, but still formerly Cape Networks. This is a pretty interesting solution, and it's really the only thing out there like this. Basically, it's a small Linux box that goes up into your ceiling, controlled from the cloud, utilizes cellular data to send information to the cloud, and acts like a client so that you can do real testing and actually have real insight into what a client experiences when they connect into your Wi-Fi. So you can run real applications like a phone call or a Skype message or whatever it is that you want to check to see how that application is really going to perform. It really keeps your network honest and will work in any third-party solution out there because it's really, again, just acting as a client connecting in. This is really powerful when you use it with some of our other solutions like AirWave or Aruba Central that have that clarity that allows you to see what you're experiencing on the network side and compare it to what you might be experiencing on a client side. Really good for troubleshooting, really good for proactively making sure that your network is really servicing clients in the way that you would expect it to. All right. Now, we also have our NETINSIGHT, which is our network analytics engine. Basically, the way that this product really works is that you have a data collector on site that collects information about the environment that it's in, and any network device that's in that environment is going to send that information to the data collector. That sends that off to the cloud, where we apply some machine learning. Now, everybody that has these in place is doing the same thing, and we're really comparing and contrasting configurations in networks to see who is the most efficient. So if you set this up and you have your network running, you'll get a report, and then it will tell you what changes you can make to make your network more efficient. And then you can make those changes, and then this will tell you if it actually had the desired result or if it didn't. So the more people that are utilizing this, the better it gets, because now we're learning what the best or most efficient configurations are from everybody, and then getting everybody on the same page to make sure that everybody has the best network they possibly can have. All right, guys, lastly, we're really going to go into Meridian. Meridian is our indoor location and wayfinding solution. Very accurate wayfinding and location analytics here. You can see where exactly a device is, but more importantly, you can give people that might be visiting a business or a location the ability to have basically Google Maps inside. So a person can basically pull out their mobile device, say where they want to go, and get directions to wherever that is. Now, these work with the Bluetooth sensors. You basically put these around in the environment. You develop an app with it using the Meridian software, and now you have that indoor wayfinding. We also have the ability to do asset tags with this, so you can make sure a device isn't really walking right out of the store on you, as well as collect information about where people are and get some good business analytics from a Big Brother type of perspective. Now, one of the big differentiators about Meridian is it's really the only all-in-one solution out there. Every other solution that you might see that's indoor wayfinding or asset tracking really usually utilizes multiple components. You wouldn't be able to do all of this really from one vendor unless you went the Aruba route. All right, guys, so let's go into a little bit of a summary here and talk about the Aruba difference. Now, I just want to throw out, we do have thousands of partners as part of our Airheads community. If you're ever looking for some advice, it's a very well-tended space. It's a very good way to get questions answered. It's a very good way to help get a configuration or a Aruba expert to jump on and help you with a situation. All right. Now, in our mobile-first architecture, I just want to say we're a very open vendor. Almost everything has open APIs, and we like to work with other solutions. We would like you to go Aruba all the way, but we understand that there are going to be gaps that Aruba isn't always able to fill, and so we want to work with everybody to ensure that you're going to have the best network available for you. We also have a lot of flexibility in our single architecture. An instant access point can be controlled by a controller. It can go into the cloud. It can come back and be on its own. You can control that with AirWave. You have a lot of different flexible options when it comes to an Aruba solution. Pick what works for you instead of having to rip and replace. If a solution isn't really working, you have the flexibility to move in the direction that makes the most sense for you. We are market leading. We are enterprise class. We are a Gartner leader, so definitely stay confident when recommending with Aruba. We're definitely a leader when it comes to security. We have our Introspect and our ClearPass products, as well as policy enforcement and dynamic segmentation, all rolled in right there at the edge. So we're definitely pretty powerful when it comes to making sure your network is secure. We're also the only complete indoor location solution out there. So if you're looking at that wayfinding solution, don't look any further. Aruba is where you want to look. All right, guys. So really, again, why Aruba here? Great performance. We have the products for connecting the intelligent edge. We have a full switching and access point solution. We have a lot of integrations, a lot of management with our AirWave, our ClearPass, our Aruba Central, or our switching integration. And there's just no cost of ownership, no licensing for switching features, no cost paywalls for our upgrades. Everything is open standard, and we're giving limited lifetime on our entire access switching portfolio, access points and controllers, and we still offer that 5-year warranty on our core products. So why Aruba? We're strong when it comes to the technology, we're strong when it comes to the support, and we're strong when it comes to playing nice with others. We give you the flexibility to make sure that you have the best network available, and we're not going to nickel and dime you along the way. And just to kind of, throw this out here, a lot of different people that are some big name companies are the ones that are getting behind the Aruba. We have your Facebook, your Google, DreamWorks, LinkedIn, McDonald's, Nordstrom, Harvard, Fidelity, United, Marriott, lots of different big names here. You can go ahead and look through this if you'd like. You can see all the different logos of some of the strongest companies out there that have chosen Aruba. So definitely, as you see those Aruba requests ramp up, there's a reason why we're the best when it comes to wired and wireless networking, and really we have the names and the technology to prove it. With that, I have finished this presentation here, so thank you very much for joining.